Hello again, you guys. Welcome to our kitchen hut. You're here with the Wise Woman Way. Thank you for tuning in. This is part two of our plantation breakfast. And I say that because, yes, I said plantation. Um, my mom allowed me, I'm Elizabeth Lyde, to be raised some years by my grandmother, my early years. I spent a lot of time with my grandmother. And just to give you a little history of our family, you see, my grandmother came up first from Mount Olive, North Carolina, where there was land given to my great grandfather, Samuel Sr. Um, he was believed to serve in the Confederate Army in North Carolina. When slavery was over, he was given some land, a lot of land, because his son Samuel Jr. winded up with the land. And when Samuel Jr. grew up and got married, he was the only biological child of my great grandfather Samuel Sr. The land passed over to my great grandfather, like I said, Samuel Jr., who had six sons. And five of those six sons, all six of the sons owned land. And they worked the land. And they all built their own homes, except for my Uncle General Johnson, who was the bishop, to help build churches in America. He the only one didn't work the land like the other boys because his parents, my great great grandmother Charity and grandfather Samuel Jr. saw something different in him. And at the end results, he became a bishop, very well known during his times. Anyhow, moving on, through the bishop of our family, moved into Goldsboro, North Carolina, because he was able to go around and see. He was exposed to stuff. He brought a lot of the family up from the old country, which was like a really, in Mount Olive, like a little village setting, into Goldsboro, North Carolina. And my great great uncle, Bishop General Johnston, was known in Goldsboro, North Carolina. And I do hold one of the books to show the proof of what I'm talking about. I don't do too much talking and don't have no scholarship or will not cite my sources. I have scholarship. Anyhow, moving on, we went into Goldsboro, North Carolina. He actually had, the bishop had a house built for my great grandmother, my grandma Betty, which was my grandmother who raised me. Garland Elizabeth raised me, my mom's mother. Well, my grandmother who raised me, her mother, or rather, I'll just say her grandmother, was born in slavery in 1839, and her name was Mary. She died in 1941. She was 103 years old. My mother, remember my great grandmother Mary. Also, she was also the great grandmother of the late Lance Reddick, who was totally kin to my family on his father's side, Solomon Reddick, whose mother was Eveline, and her mother, of course, was Martha, who went out to Georgia. And the other sister, Mary Jane, and also Betty, they stayed there in Mount Olive. So now we're into Goldsboro. From Goldsboro, North Carolina, my grandmother went to school at Warsaw High School and received her high school diploma in 1934. From there, she moved on with the older sister to Durham, North Carolina, stayed there some time. And also she had a son, Otha Clement Hargrove, but his father was an outlaw. Real stories. Moving on, she went to moved to Newark, New Jersey for a while. Not Newark, Elizabeth, New Jersey for a while. And then she went to Harlem, New York, and lived for a spell with her oldest sister, Lily B. Williams. And so that's a story for another day about Lily B. Williams in Harlem during the roaring 20s and 30s as well. My grandma, who I call Nana, Elizabeth Garland, same thing, using names intertwinedly. She came on to New Haven, Connecticut, worked at the Winchester Repeating Arms where they made rifles. Actually, they did help play a major part in the war that was fought because they made the rifles up here and everything, which made them need lesser men. Anyhow, it was close by Mount Olive where the war ended in Bentonville, North Carolina. Anyhow, I thank God we was there in 2015, celebrating 150 years of the end, one, of the Civil War, and two, of the abolishment of slavery, which we know that slavery did still continue even into the 20s. Okay, that's a story for another day as well. Coming back to New Haven, Connecticut, my grandmother moved here. She worked at Winchester Repeating Arms as a production worker, and then she moved her way into the office in administration. She did secretarial work. From there, she went on to school for nursing, and then got a degree in nursing and moved forward into the field of the healthcare, which she worked at a few convalescent homes, and then found her way to the VA hospital in West Haven, Connecticut. Not far from the hospital in West Haven, the VA hospital, my grandmother, Nana, she purchased property on Lamberton Street, a big old house that once sat in the field where Washington Avenue Park is around the corner. They moved the house from the park to 199, 197 Lamberton Street. I should have said 197, 199 Lamberton Street. And so from there, that's where I grew up. Well, before, that wasn't the first house she bought. I am so sorry. Correction. First house she bought was on 6 Sylvan Avenue, and this is going to be a story for another day too, because that house she bought on Washington Avenue came after Sylvan Avenue. Sylvan Avenue, there's a whole story about the Black Panther Party there. We'll save that for another day, move on with our story. So my grandmother raised me. And I grew up on Lamberton Street, and we had, we grew up there with a grapevine around the house, an apple tree, cherry tree, pears, mulberry bush, and she was a real gardener of the spirit as well as of the ground. I was impacted growing up there with her. I'll never forget, I was maybe about 9, 10 years old, where she put a pack of cards, a box of little cards in my hand about different inventors and stuff who was African American. Well, they call them colored people or either black folks then. And I started studying those cards, and she forced me to study and become educated. And that was the beginning of me starting to see that there was more to African American people than what I was learning in the black church, where we had the little pictured cards starting off in it wasn't the primary, elementary course in the church. I know I can't really call that name, elementary, the junior, primary, and the seniors. I grew up through the church like that. Anyhow, I was blessed, and I knew that I had to work. I started working at 12 years old, believe it or not. Me and my first cousin Sharon, we tried the newspaper thing. Then we was little counselors, and I even, forgive me, God, told a lie about my about the year I was born because I want to work so bad, because that was shown all around me, working, having things. I used to work in my uncle's supermarket, and then with my grandfather, who was my step grandfather, in our in the candy store in Church Street South when it was first built. And I also worked at the first location there in the projects of Church Street South, where Joe, my uncle, step uncle, had his store with his wife Jessie, Joe and Jessie Supermarket. I worked there bagging and did little things he wanted me to do at times when I would show up there, as well as working along with my Uncle Charles. We would go to his store after church on Sundays. So I grew up, with a lot of people working around me. Then, my grandmother always stayed busy. She was in the business of building churches in terms of organizing. And my grandfather, step grandfather, was right there too. My biological grandfather lived in Philadelphia. Him and my grandmother had split it up in Goldsboro, and she moved on with her life and he moved on with his. Anyhow, these stories about my uncles, all, including my father, who literally worked in a cab business and owned his own cab in Tarboro, North Carolina for over 35 years. I was around a lot of men that I seen that worked for themselves, and that really impacted my life. When I grew up, about all the entrepreneurs that were around me, and as well as my grandmother showing me the way to Black history. And this is why today I have the African history. And, let's not cut my mom short. I'm not going to. But also, at just as young, my mom was invested into her Africanism as well. Of course, when her and my father marriage crumbled, what happened, that's a subject for another day. But we had a beautiful home on Spring Street in New Haven, Connecticut. Things didn't work out, different variations, and it played a factor in, these marriages with the Black women and Black men. That's another subject for another day too, coming off the plantation. I'm going to tell you how people came off the plantation. Anyhow, getting back to where we are, and I don't want to stay too much longer on this part two. But you see, we as a people have become, a lot of us, not all, become dehumanized by the love of money. Not by money, but the love of money. That love of money becomes your God. You can't serve two masters. You love one and you hate the other. These are facts. They're in the scriptures. They're in sacred books. Okay, so I just want to make that clear. And moving on, my reflection after the multiple funerals that I attend this year, there's much to be talked about that the Black community don't talk about at all. And I just want to say this here after speaking with my children, on these different funerals we attend. And yes, we talk about things that matter close to the heart. And if you don't, I don't know what to say to you, but we talk about things that are important. Okay, that's what me and my children do. And I thank God, because that's how I was raised by my mother. Sitting at the kitchen table was our support system. We had everything to talk, we laughed, we joked, but the kitchen table, that's where we did everything. And that's how we learned to talk about important subjects. And we knew what was going on with each other because we was a support system. We sat down and we communicated. Today, we don't communicate like that. That's another subject for another day. Technology has taken over. Anyway, moving on. So the love of money can take you places that you will be clueless, that you have these different behaviors and people looking at you one way and you're thinking, oh, you're going the right way and this and that. Look, let me tell you something, folk. You come into this world a spirit, and when you leave as a spirit. How dare you come into this world and live in this world of illusion from the beginning to the end, and you never get to see things for what it really is, or are, shall I say. Especially when you have children coming after you, and grandchildren and great grandchildren coming after you, and you never took the time to invest in your own education. What do I mean by your own education? Simply, know thyself. What does it mean to know thyself? Go within you, the very fiber of your being, to find out who you are and what was intended for you. Ask yourself such questions as this: who am I? Why am I here? When did I get here? What I am here for? You know, all five of the fives. And seek answers for each one, because you'll find out that you have a purpose, of course, for being here. Find out what that purpose is. Most of the time, we're here to serve others. We're all waiting on a long line just to get here. So you get here and you let money become your God. You start treating people any kind of way. Or you think you can walk and talk in the world the way you want to, and you can treat people the way you want to. No, no, no. Let me tell you something. If you think you can do this, there's going to be a rude awakening. And if you don't find it in a rude awakening, your children will find it. So you pick and choose who you will serve this day. But I tell you this much: money is not the answer. Money is part of the answer for living here in this society as at this particular time in the history of mankind. Yes, we need money to survive. I need it, you need it. But let's not become dehumanized by it. Treat people any kind of way. If you treat people any kind of way, you don't have no training on how to treat people. That means you don't have no spiritual guidance. That means you wasn't raised up by someone who had spiritual guidance. Everybody don't have spiritual guidance. A lot of people sleeping. Their spirit is laying dormant. People don't even know how to come up to you and talk to you. Or some people can, because they have the same energy you have. And just because somebody hanging around you and you like each other, that doesn't mean that, you know, you're a Jew or you're educated or you got something that's worth finding out about. It's just that, you know, birds of the same feather flock together. Now, let me just say this too. If you're a person and you don't have a whole lot of friends around you, people scared to be around you, people run from you, guess what? You should applaud yourself, because someone on a higher level is applauding you. That would be your ancestors, the God in you. Okay? So if people running away from you, scared to be around you, it's because of your politics, what you speak, what you teach, how you live, your perspective in life, what you see. Everybody don't see on the same level. Like I said, it's based on how you was raised. Anyway, today's subject really is about plantation food, and I want to talk about plantation food. And remember, plantation food, we had no other choice. They gave us the ends and the bad of everything, and we turned around and made these dishes. We made them taste really good. And today, I can't call that word right now, but it's a culinary now. You know, it's gourmet cooking now. But this is with all gourmet cooking, basically, you don't just eat that like that. That has to be eaten in moderation. But anyway, we know the foods that are good for us and the foods that's not so good for us, and foods that's not so good for us, such as plantation food. You won't want to consume that a whole lot at all. Maybe once a month won't hurt, you know, or twice a month or 4 times a month. It shouldn't hurt, based on how much of it you get at a time. Anyway, I'll be moving on with this subject. So I saw a lot of things during these funerals I attended, and I'm telling you, they were very, very ugly. And I'm talking about these funerals where, you know, we have these funerals at these black churches. And like I said, I grew up in the church. I know the church. I know the Bible. I had the Bible in my hand for 2 decades, reading it practically every day. And I have scholarship to show you that I did. But I don't have to prove anything to nobody. I got my scholarship, and I always cite my sources. Okay? Yes, and I'm happy I learned that's what it was, citing sources in college. I'm grateful. And I just want to say that, you know, when it comes down, you know, maybe I'll take this part of the subject of this plantation food, going back to history. Maybe I don't have no other choice under iSpace, okay, but to do a part 3 of this video from the Wise Women Way. But this is your host, Elizabeth Lige, speaking from her kitchen hut. I thank you guys for tuning in. There's much to speak on. Maybe I'll just go ahead and do a couple of videos from this subject, because when it comes down to African Americans, what we do, and I thank God that a lot of people are tuning in more today than ever before, is that when we begin to talk about anything that touches on slavery, we really start running, rather, grasping and wanting to know more about it. We run for it. We don't even want to be black. We don't even want to be too dark. I'm telling you, African Americans, foundational Black Americans. Well, if you're calling yourself foundational Black Americans, you're definitely in the study of Black history now, or African history. But I'm going to say this here on this part 2. Look, Africa was born in us. Before the church, the mosque, all religions, Africa was born in us. And as a matter of fact, these things we get that's called religion comes from out of the very being of the black man. Okay? All these religions come from out of the black man. And that's another subject for another day. I'm going to leave it to that, because I tell you, I could go on. If you like what I do, we do. I have to correct that, because we're supposed to be working on the we, us, our, not the me, my, and I. So if you like what we do, that would be the Wise Woman Way. All of us women are wise. Some of us are laying dormant and can't become wise because we're laying dormant. Therefore, you could never be what you never can become. Becoming is a process. It takes time. So if you never take the time to study your Black history, truly you cannot be a historian. I am a historian, and I am a teacher, a loving mother, a lot of times misunderstood because of my high nature of spirituality. I was born in the church, raised in the church. I know all about the church, study Islam, a little bit of the Judaism. And I just love learning new things. And I love seeking truth. And I'm learning and learning every day. And the one thing I know, which most of the sacred scriptures say, and they all come from one place anyway, most things is a spin-off of the Bible from out of Ethiopia. But it comes from the hearts and the minds of Black folks in Africa. So once again, I'm going to leave you right here, and we'll get back to part 3 on plantation food. Thank you for tuning in. If you like what we do, like what we talk about, go ahead and share our content so we can get good ratings. And also subscribe. That's where the ratings come in at. You don't have to do anything. We're just asking you. We're just trying to do some real talk today. There's a time and place for everything. Ashe.